We do have breaking news. President-elect Trump has sued the Des Moines Register and its retiring star pollster Ann Seltzer over a poll that had Vice President Harris ahead of him in Iowa. Trump ultimately did win Iowa. The suit argues the poll constituted election interference. At his news conference, Trump telegraphed this was coming.
I want to expand on the defamation lawsuits. Could you see moving that to other people with individual platforms, social media influencers, people that...
Or newspapers, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I do. I think you have to do it because they're very dishonest. I'm going to be bringing one against the people in Iowa, their newspaper, which had a very, very good pollster who got me right all the time. And then just before the election, she said I was going to lose by 3 or 4 points.
In an ominous follow-up to a video that we did yesterday, Donald Trump is officially following through on his public threats to sue a retiring pollster for daring to publish a poll showing him losing to Vice President Kamala Harris on the grounds that this somehow constitutes election interference. So you got that right. The president-elect of the United States, the leader of the party of free speech and free press, is using lawfare to punish the media he doesn't like for absurd reasons. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video. These are not idle threats, which would quite frankly be bad enough. I am someone who believes that words from powerful people matter, Republican or Democrat, and so even threatening to use the legal system to target your political or media enemies is bad enough, but Trump is actually following through on that threat. As right-wing commentator and political researcher Richard Hanania says, Trump, I'm going to sue Ann Seltzer for releasing a poll I didn't like. This is what he says. If you care about free speech and the abuse of government power, this is easily the worst man in politics. You are a blind idiot if you don't see this. And I categorically agree. We don't see anything like this sort of censorious impulse in the Democratic Party. Nothing comparable to the walking nexus of censorship that is Donald Trump. And we're going to play other clips. But before we do, let's just dive into some of the particulars. Trump sues Des Moines Register and top pollster over final Iowa survey. Trump is escalating his legal campaign against media outlets by suing renowned pollster Ann Seltzer, her polling firm, the Des Moines Register newspaper, and its parent company, Gannett. Unlike many of Trump's legal actions against the press, which often allege defamation, this case alleges violations of the Iowa Consumer Fraud Act, which prohibits deception when advertising or selling merchandise. While the non-traditional claims are unlikely to succeed in court, Trump is using the lawsuit to wage a broadside against what he perceives as left-wing media, mainstream press coverage of elections, and the role of pollsters during campaigns. Though he won the 2024 election, Trump alleges the news coverage of Seltzer's poll, published days before the election showing Kamala Harris with a surprising lead in Iowa that didn't materialize in the vote, was intended to artificially help Democrats during the campaign. Now, as I mentioned in the video yesterday when we first discussed Trump's threats to do this, how the hell could that be the case? Polls don't influence elections, at least not directly, right? What did he imagine that this poll would do? He won Iowa. He won the election. So what was the fraud here? What was the election interference? What could Ann Seltzer have possibly done to try to affect the outcome of the election in some sort of nefarious way? You won Iowa, you won the election, and Vice President Harris publicly and privately conceded the election. Do you think the polls somehow automatically switch votes? Is that what you think? Or are voters who intended to vote for you, Donald Trump, looking at this Ann Seltzer poll going, oh, shit, this poll says that Kamala Harris is going to win Iowa. I guess I'm just going to vote for Harris, even though I intended to vote for Trump? How does this work? It's nonsensical. The Des Moines Register said in a statement that the newspaper and Seltzer had acknowledged the pre-election poll did not reflect the ultimate margin of victory and have released the poll's full data and details, as well as a technical explanation from Seltzer. But we stand by our reporting on the matter and believe this lawsuit is without merit, said a spokesperson for the newspaper's parent company. The case comes on the heels of Trump winning a $16 million payout from ABC News in a defamation case that he and the news organization settled over the weekend. Trump and his allies also continue to rail against news outlets, threaten them, and pursue other court cases against large outlets and a book publisher. So, keep going. Quote, I don't expect this lawsuit to go anywhere, election law expert Rick Hasson, a professor at UCLA School of Law, wrote upon learning of the case Monday night. But even if the case gets thrown out or Trump loses, the legal action demands time and financial resources to fight, including lawyers' fees, time preparing responses, court hearings, and possibly even deposition and discovery. Experts have said Trump is taking a page out of authoritarian playbooks employed by strongmen around the world who have gone after the news media over a range of supposed crimes, often unrelated to journalism. Joel Simon, director of the CUNY Journalism Protection Initiative, told CNN that he would, quote, would not have imagined that some of these same tactics would be deployed in the United States. Quote, I would also be concerned about the arbitrary, petty, and vindictive nature of these legal actions that President-elect Trump is pursuing, Simon added. Quote, the possibility of legal victory is slim because under the actual malice standard, reporting done in good faith is protected by the U.S. Before a smaller or less resourced news organization, mounting a legal defense can be a serious challenge. It is the chilling effect. That is the point. So we're going to go back to CNN because the host has a conversation with Brian Stelter, who helped break the story.
All right, CNN's Brian Stelter is with us now. Brian, you were part of the team that broke this story along with Paula Reed and Caitlin Polance. First of all, tell us what this suit is. This is not exactly a defamation suit.
No, unlike a lot of the lawsuits Trump has filed in the past, usually unsuccessfully against news outlets, this is not a defamation suit. This is a case in Iowa that relies on a pretty dramatic or aggressive interpretation of the Iowa Consumer Fraud Act. That's a law that prohibits deception when advertising or selling merchandise. So you can imagine Trump's legal team here looking for a law in Iowa they can use to sue Ann Selzer and the Des Moines Register and its parent company, Gannett. And they've landed on this consumer fraud protection law. They're basically arguing that the poll was an example of fraud, that it was, quote, election interfering fiction. Now, as you said, John, Ann Selzer has a sterling reputation, or at least she did until this year. Her pre-election poll was wildly wrong, and she has acknowledged so. She went through the data last month trying to figure out what went wrong, and she came to the conclusion that she did her job the best she could, and the poll was off for a variety of obscure reasons that just chalked up to the reality of the difficulty of polling. In other words, she's saying she reported the facts the best she could. But Trump is saying this poll was fiction. It distorted the final days of the election. This seems like a legal long shot, but oftentimes when Trump files suit, the goal is not necessarily to win, it's to make his opponents suffer. And this might be one of those cases, John.
Yeah, look, polls miss sometimes. I mean, that's why there's always a margin of error. This was way out of the margin of error, but polls miss sometimes. You talk about how sometimes Trump does this to cause pain. There may be an even bigger strategy here, which Trump frankly alluded to at this news conference as he heads into this new administration.
Yes, talking about straightening out the press. That's a euphemism for trying to tone down any and all negative or critical coverage. And we know that he spent his first term in office deriding so-called fake news, trying to label real news as fake. Now he's taking actions, not just using his words, but taking actions. And I don't think it's a coincidence that he was able to prevail against ABC with that shocking $15 million settlement on Saturday. And then on Monday, he has his legal team file this suit in Iowa. He has threatened other suits as well, and he has a number of them pending. But let's remember that the law goes both ways. Trump is also being sued for defamation by multiple parties. This case, though, this is a rarity because it is a fraud case. We will see pretty quickly, I think, whether a judge in Iowa takes this seriously. But the broader point, as Puck's Tara Palmieri wrote last night, the broader point might here be to deter polling in general, to stop pollsters from coming out with polls that make Trump look bad. He has a tremendous amount of power right now, and Trump seems intent on using it in aggressive ways he didn't use the first time around.
And that is precisely the danger. This is, I mean, it's multi-layered, it's multifaceted. It's bad enough that in this particular case, but what it signals for the future, again, he hasn't even been inaugurated yet. He's the president-elect. We will have 4 years of this nonsense at a minimum if he doesn't change course. This is absolutely terrifying. It's sobering. It's one of those things that, it's hard to square the circle when so many people are claiming, Trump is pro-free speech. Trump is pro-free press. And if you look on social media, this decision is being celebrated by MAGA Republicans and MAGA voters. Now, again, imagine the shoes on the other foot. Imagine President Biden says, I'm going to sue Fox News. Fox News had to pay nearly $800 million because they signal boosted the lies. in a defamatory way or potentially defamatory way against Dominion voting systems. And so they paid nearly $1 billion to settle this particular case. I'm going to sue Fox News over the terrible things they've said about me. You know, what Fox News has done constitutes election interference. Imagine if Joe Biden or Kamala Harris said something like that. How would these same MAGA Republicans celebrating Trump's censorious impulses here react in a counterfactual where the Democrats do that? But again, what it presents is, as far as Republicans are concerned, there's nothing off the table, and they are not bound by single standards. They can simultaneously condemn the tactics that they are actively employing in a hypothetical world if Democrats were to employ them, and yet go full steam ahead as long as it furthers Trump. The shamelessness is their superpower. And this is absolutely sobering for free speech in this country, free press. And again, the future of polling. So imagine Trump, in theory, can't run for office again because of the Constitution, you know, capping presidential term limits for 2 terms, including non-consecutive. But what about during his administration? Polls will still be conducted. Is this a way to chill, you know, negative polls against him or Republicans he happens to like? Loyalists? And again, it'd be bad enough if he were simply threatening to do it. I am a firm believer that a president or president-elect's words matter, political leaders' words matter. But he's not just simply spewing rhetoric, he's following through with concrete legal action. I don't know what this means, or I don't know what we can expect from the future. What this certainly does mean is that Trump is not a champion of free speech. Trump is a hypocrite, a malignant narcissist who cares only about himself. And the real question is, will Americans stand for this? My fear is that so many Americans are just not only inured to Trump's hypocrisy, they again actively contribute to it. They grade him on a curve. Bad if Democrats do this, which they don't, but it would be bad if Democrats did this, and it's okay if Trump actually does this, or we just don't care. And again, he hasn't even been inaugurated yet. So it seems like the true lawfare is really beginning now that Trump is in a position to really, you know, maximize his advantage, to push his power, to throw his weight around. And it seems like in so many instances, media is capitulating in advance. He hasn't even been inaugurated yet. And you have so many instances, including, by the way, of Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, the Washington Post, Jeff Bezos, and so many others, Time Magazine, bending the knee and kissing the ring. I think we may truly be in for dark times ahead. So here's where we are. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.